It was the acrid smell of smoke that jolted me awake at 2 a.m. Instantly, I leaped out of bed and rushed to the window. My heart nearly hammered through my ribs. My grandfather's cherished vintage John Deere tractor was engulfed in flames, licking furiously towards the night sky. This wasn't just an accident. This felt like war. A war I never signed up for when I bought this place just 3 short months ago. Let me back things up a bit. My name is Mike Rossi. You see, after 15 long years grinding away in the city, I'd finally scrimped and saved enough to buy my dream home. A cozy little farmhouse nestled on 5 acres right at the edge of the upscale Oak Ridge Estates development. Sure, the house itself needed some TLC, but the land? It was absolutely perfect for the hobby farm I'd fantasized about since I was a kid. And that classic green and yellow 1952 John Deere tractor? That wasn't just machinery, it was my grandfather's pride and joy, a legacy passed down to me when he passed away last year. Believe it or not, the very first day after moving in, I discovered a rather fancy envelope stuck conspicuously to my front door. Inside, printed on thick, creamy paper with ostentatious gold lettering, was a letter, "Welcome to Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. Membership required. Annual dues $500. I actually laughed out loud and promptly tossed it into the trash. My property clearly wasn't part of their ritzy development. I had the official property maps and county records to prove it, plain as day. My land, in fact, had been here long before they ever started building their rows of identical cookie-cutter houses with their unnervingly perfect lawns. That's precisely when I had my first run-in with Brenda Vance. She marched right up my gravel driveway, a woman clad in a blindingly bright pink tracksuit, adorned with diamond earrings so large you could probably spot them from space. "You must be the new neighbor," she stated, flashing a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "I'm Brenda Vance, president of the Oak Ridge Estates HOA. Trying to be neighborly, I introduced myself and even offered her a glass of fresh lemonade I'd just made. She pointedly ignored the offer. "I noticed you haven't sent in your membership forms yet," she continued, her gaze drifting past me towards my grandfather's tractor, parked near the old barn. Her nose wrinkled slightly, as if she'd just caught a whiff of something unpleasant. And frankly, that farm equipment is a clear violation of our community standards. I attempted politeness, trying to diffuse the situation. "Actually, this property isn't technically part of Oak Ridge Estates," I explained patiently. "It was my grandfather's farm decades before your development even existed. I have all the official paperwork right here." Instantly, Brenda's fake smile evaporated. "Every single property within this zip code falls under our association's jurisdiction," she snapped, her voice sharp. "That eyesore needs to be removed immediately. It's drastically bringing down property values." After she finally stormed off, I immediately called the county clerk's office and double-checked my deed, just to be absolutely certain. Just as I thought, my property was completely, unequivocally exempt from any HOA rules or regulations. Feeling vindicated, I sent Brenda a polite but firm email, attaching scanned copies of the relevant documents. Predictably, the very next morning, I found my mailbox crammed, not with apologies, but with violation notices. And not just for the tractor. Apparently, my fledgling vegetable garden, the chicken coop I was in the middle of constructing, and even the perfectly standard color of my mailbox were all in violation. Each notice carried the ominous threat of hefty fines, $100 per day, per violation. My neighbor on the other side, a friendly older gentleman named Dave Miller, came over that afternoon, leaning conspiratorially over the fence. "Watch out for Brenda," he warned, his voice low. "She's been on a real power trip ever since she got elected HOA president last month. Ran on a platform of cleaning up the neighborhood and protecting property values. Between you and me, she's already managed to force 3 families to move out. Over the next 2 weeks, things escalated dramatically. Brenda and her HOA cronies took to driving past my house constantly, conspicuously snapping pictures of my property. More violation notices appeared daily. Then, someone actually called animal control about my chickens, despite the fact that I possessed all the proper permits. Thankfully, the officer who showed up just rolled his eyes sympathetically when I explained the situation with Brenda. "Not surprised," he sighed. "We get nuisance calls from that HOA all the time." Undeterred, I tried reasoning with them at their next monthly meeting. I came prepared, bringing my property documents, detailed survey maps, and even a formal letter from my lawyer clearly explaining why my farm was legally exempt from their rules. Brenda, however, cut me off after barely 2 minutes. "Rules are rules, Mr. Rossi," she stated dismissively. "No exceptions." Later that same evening, out of the blue, my old college roommate, Chris Washington, called. We hadn't spoken in months, so it was great to catch up. He'd just landed a significant promotion in Washington, D.C. "Man, I can't spill too much over the phone," he said, his voice buzzing with excitement. "But I'm working on a really special agricultural project now. Get this, the president himself is backing it. It's all about national food security and developing innovative new farming methods. We urgently need a test site, somewhere outside the city, but still close enough for officials to visit easily. Honestly, Mike, your place sounds absolutely perfect." Just as I was about to unload my escalating HOA woes onto him, the distinct, acrid smell of smoke hit my nostrils. Looking out the window, my blood ran cold as I saw an ominous orange glow illuminating the barn area. "Chris, I gotta go," I yelled, dropping the phone abruptly. "Someone set my tractor on fire." Adrenaline surging, I grabbed my fire extinguisher and bolted outside in my pajamas, the cold night air stinging my lungs as I sprinted towards my burning tractor. The flames were already towering over me, orange and angry against the inky black sky. I battled the blaze as best I could, aiming the extinguisher at the base, but it felt hopelessly inadequate against the inferno. Then, chillingly, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. 4 figures standing silently in the shadows across the street, just watching. Watching as I worked desperately, futilely, to save my grandfather's beloved tractor. One of them stepped deliberately into the flickering light cast by the fire. Stepping into the flickering light, unmistakably, was Brenda Vance, clad in a bathrobe, her arms crossed defiantly, a small, smug smile playing on her lips. Standing slightly behind her were 3 men in suits, individuals I recognized as HOA board members from the disastrous meeting. "Fire department's on the way," yelled Dave, my friendly neighbor, running over frantically, dragging his garden hose. "What happened?" "Ask them," I choked out, pointing a trembling, soot-covered finger across the street towards Brenda and her audience. Incredibly, Brenda stepped forward, projecting her voice so the gathering neighbors could hear clearly. "Your unauthorized farm equipment poses a significant fire hazard," she declared loudly. "This unfortunate incident is exactly why we have strict rules against such eyesores. Perhaps now you will finally consider joining our association and adhering to proper community guidelines." I stared at her, utterly dumbfounded. Was she actually suggesting with a straight face that my vintage tractor had spontaneously combusted at 2 in the morning? That this horrifying event was somehow my fault? Just then, the wail of sirens grew louder, and fire trucks arrived, lights flashing. The firefighters quickly deployed their hoses and expertly got the blaze under control, but tragically, it was too late. My grandfather's beautiful John Deere tractor was reduced to a blackened, twisted metal shell. I sank to the ground, covered in soot and despair, numbly watching as Fire Chief Evans carefully examined the scene. "This was no accident, son," he stated quietly, kneeling beside the wreckage. "I can smell accelerant, gasoline, most likely." Next, Officer Davies arrived and began taking my statement, his eyes scanning the property methodically. "Any idea who might be responsible for this, Mr. Rossi?" he asked gently. My gaze drifted across the street, where Brenda and her HOA companions were still observing, now attempting to look appropriately concerned as more neighbors gathered around, murmuring amongst themselves. "I have my suspicions," I replied grimly, "and what's more, I might just have proof." You see, after the mailbox vandalism incident the previous week, I had taken the precaution of installing several security cameras around my property, something Brenda clearly didn't know about. I led Officer Davies inside to my computer and pulled up the footage from the camera pointed towards the barn. The footage, even in night vision, was remarkably clear. Just after midnight, two men wearing uniforms clearly labeled Oak Ridge Maintenance approached my tractor. They carefully placed large yellow violations stickers on it. Then, chillingly, one of them pulled out a red gas can. "We'll just scare him a little," the first man said, his voice clearly audible on the recording. "Brenda wants this thing gone by morning, one way or another." The second man sounded nervous. "She just said to tag it, Mike, not torch it." "Relax," the first guy scoffed, pouring liquid around the base of the tractor tires. "Just a small fire, it'll smoke up good. He'll call the fire department, get spooked, and by tomorrow, he'll be begging to follow the HOA rules." Officer Davies watched the footage intently, then watched it again, his expression growing darker with each viewing. "This is extremely serious," he muttered, shaking his head. "Arson, destruction of property, conspiracy." He immediately radioed for backup, and within minutes, 3 more police cars arrived, lights flashing silently now. I watched from my front porch as Officer Davies calmly walked across the street and confronted Brenda Vance and the HOA board members, showing them stills from my security footage on his tablet. Brenda's face instantly turned ghost white. The man I recognized as the HOA treasurer nervously tried to edge away, but another officer quickly intercepted him. "They were just supposed to tag it for removal," Brenda insisted loudly, perhaps hoping the neighbors would hear her weak defense. "The accelerant, that must have been an accident." That slip-up, that partial admission, was all Officer Davies needed. I watched, still in shock, as Brenda Vance and 2 of the HOA board members were read their rights, handcuffed, and escorted firmly to the waiting police cars. As they led her away, Brenda twisted her head toward me, her face contorted with rage. "This isn't over, Rossi," she screamed. "That monstrosity violates our community standards. You'll never win against the association." Remarkably, as the police cars vanished down the street, neighbors I'd barely spoken to started emerging from their houses, coming over to offer support and sympathy. Dave brought over a large pot of coffee for everyone. An older lady named Rose confided that the HOA, under Brenda's direction, had actually confiscated her beloved garden gnomes last summer. A young couple shared how Brenda had fined them $500 because their children's swing set was allegedly 2 inches taller than the HOA regulations allowed. "She's been terrorizing this neighborhood for months," Dave explained, shaking his head sadly. "Nobody's had the guts, or maybe the evidence, to really stand up to her. Until now, that is." By sunrise, incredibly, my yard was bustling with neighbors offering to help clean up the debris. Someone brought donuts. 3 different people generously offered to lend me farm equipment until I could figure things out. A local news reporter even showed up, having picked up the incident details from the police scanner overnight. I was utterly exhausted, physically and emotionally, but also deeply grateful for the unexpected outpouring of community support. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Chris Washington. "Just talked to POTUS about our project. He's flying in tomorrow to see your place. Don't tell anyone. This is highly classified." I stared at the message in disbelief. POTUS? The President of the United States coming here to my farm tomorrow? I looked around numbly at my burned-out tractor, the lingering fire damage, the crowd of supportive neighbors, the reporter diligently taking pictures. How on earth could I possibly host the President of the United States in this chaos? And a chilling thought occurred. What would happen when Brenda Vance inevitably made bail? I had a sinking feeling she wasn't the type to simply give up easily. What had started as seemingly simple, albeit malicious neighborhood harassment had just collided head-on with matters of national security. Then, at 5:30 a.m., the sound of car doors slamming jolted me awake again. Peeking out the window, I saw men and women in dark professional suits systematically combing my yard. My poor burned tractor still sat sadly in the field, a stark black reminder of the HOA's malicious actions. A sharp knock echoed on my door. Mr. Rossi, a tall woman with short, no-nonsense hair, introduced herself briskly. "I'm Agent Sharp with the Secret Service. We need to secure your property immediately." My jaw practically hit the floor. "Secret Service? Is this about the tractor fire?" Agent Sharp shook her head curtly. "No, sir. This is regarding your visitor today. President Hayes will be arriving in approximately 3 hours. Our priority is to ensure everything is completely secure." Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Chris. "Sorry about the early wake-up call. Couldn't warn you about security protocols. Be ready by 8 a.m. I scrambled to get dressed as more black SUVs pulled up silently outside. Agents, accompanied by trained dogs, meticulously walked the perimeter of my land. Others began setting up metal detectors near the entrance to my driveway. One team was even checking underneath my porch with long-handled mirrors. "We have a situation, Mr. Rossi," Agent Sharp stated calmly, looking through a pair of high-powered binoculars towards the edge of my property line. "There appears to be a gathering." I borrowed the binoculars. Lo and behold, there stood Brenda Vance, seemingly freshly bailed out, flanked by at least 15 other people, many holding hastily made signs. "No farms in Oak Ridge. Join HOA or leave. Protect our property values." "She made bail already?" I asked, shocked and dismayed. "There's a restraining order in place against her," Agent Sharp explained coolly. "She's required to stay exactly 100 feet from your property line. Technically, she's currently complying." She spoke quietly into her wrist microphone. "Team B, monitor the crowd. Any movement towards the property line, shut it down immediately." Remembering the documents from the county clerk, I quickly reached for the folder on my kitchen counter. "Agent Sharp, you really should see these," I said, handing her my official property records and survey maps. My land was here 50 years before their development was even conceived. They've been harassing me relentlessly because I refused to join their HOA, but my property is legally completely exempt. Agent Sharp efficiently flipped through the documents. "Smart move, keeping these handy," she remarked approvingly. "Mind if I make copies?" As she scanned the papers, the distinct whirring sound of a helicopter grew rapidly louder. A sleek, black helicopter descended smoothly, landing precisely in my east field. "They're early," Agent Sharp muttered, hurrying towards the door. The helicopter door opened, and Chris Washington stepped out first, looking sharp, in a suit I'd never seen him wear before. Then, President Hayes himself emerged, smiling broadly and waving. My heart pounded. The actual President of the United States was walking confidently towards my little farmhouse. "So, you're the famous holdout farmer?" President Hayes boomed, shaking my hand firmly. His grip was strong. "Chris has told me all about your situation, and about that beautiful old John Deere. Where is it?" My stomach sank as I gestured towards the charred skeletal remains. That's what's left of it, sir. The HOA, the President's smile instantly vanished. "I was briefed on the arson incident on the way here," he said, his voice hardening. "Terrible, disgraceful business." He turned sharply to an aide standing nearby. "Make absolutely certain the Justice Department looks into this personally. Arson is a federal crime, especially when it potentially involves interference with a designated presidential project site." Suddenly, cameras flashed. News crews had somehow gotten wind of the president's visit and were now positioned just beyond the security perimeter. The protesters at the edge of my land, including Brenda, had fallen silent, staring in open-mouthed disbelief. "This land," the president announced, gesturing broadly after a brief walk around, "is perfect. The elevation, the soil quality, the water access, exactly what we need for our National Food Security Initiative. These 5 acres, Mr. Rossi, will soon become America's very first presidential vertical farming research facility." I hadn't even formally agreed yet, but I certainly wasn't about to correct the president on what was rapidly becoming national television. "Sir?" Incredibly, Brenda Vance suddenly pushed past a startled Secret Service agent, almost reaching the president before being firmly intercepted. "Sir, this man is flagrantly violating our community standards. His tractor was a dangerous eyesore. We've been trying diligently to enforce—" "Ah," the president interrupted smoothly, turning towards her, his demeanor shifting instantly. "You must be from the Homeowners Association." His voice was suddenly ice-cold. "Let me be unequivocally clear. Interfering with a presidential agricultural security project is a serious federal offense. And arson, he added pointedly, carries a minimum 10-year federal prison sentence." Brenda's face drained of all color. "Arson? No, that was just supposed to be a warning. They weren't supposed to actually—" Agent Sharp stepped forward immediately. "Ma'am," she interjected firmly, "are you admitting on record to conspiracy to commit arson?" Brenda realized her fatal slip-up far too late. As 2 agents discreetly but firmly led her away, she shouted desperately, "This isn't just about an ugly tractor. You don't understand what's really happening here." The crowd of neighboring protesters quickly dissolved, melting back towards their perfect houses as news cameras swiveled in their direction. While the president continued his tour, examining my barn and fields as experts began taking soil samples, I noticed Chris hanging back, looking unusually worried. When I caught his eye, he subtly motioned for me to join him near the damaged tractor. "There's something crucial you need to know, Mike," he whispered urgently, glancing around to ensure privacy. "This isn't just about farming anymore. We've discovered, well, let's just say it's technology that could potentially solve world hunger. But there are powerful, entrenched interests who want to stop it at all costs. Your property is perfect, not just geographically, but because, until now, it's been completely off anyone's radar." Just then, Agent Sharp interrupted us urgently. "Sir, we have an unauthorized drone overhead." Instantly, the president's security detail formed a tight, protective circle around him, rushing him swiftly back towards the waiting helicopter. As they hurried away, I looked up. A small, sophisticated-looking drone hovered high above, its camera lens pointed directly, unnervingly at me. Who was watching now? And what exactly had I just stumbled into? Although the police released Brenda Vance with an ankle monitor pending trial, my problems, it turned out, were just beginning. Strange, unfamiliar cars began driving slowly past my house at odd hours. My mail started arriving looking suspiciously like it had been opened and resealed. And that drone? It kept reappearing, hovering silently just outside my property line, a constant, unnerving presence. We traced the drone, Agent Sharp informed me grimly over coffee in my kitchen a few days later. She slid a folder across the table containing surveillance photos. It belongs to a shell company registered to Westland Development Corporation. I recognized the name instantly. Westland? They've been trying to buy my land for years. They're the ones who built the entire Oak Ridge Estates neighborhood. Agent Sharp nodded slowly. Exactly. And guess who funded Brenda Vance's successful HOA presidency campaign last year? Westland Development donated $10,000 to her community improvement fund. Suddenly, my security system pinged an alert on my phone. Someone was at my mailbox again. I quickly checked the live camera feed. It was Brenda stuffing papers inside. Isn't she violating her restraining order? I asked Agent Sharp, frustrated. Not quite, Agent Sharp sighed. Your mailbox is technically situated on county property, just inches outside your official land boundary. Clever loophole, but frankly, I'm more interested in what she's delivering. We walked down the driveway together to check. Inside the mailbox was a single sheet of paper, a formal-looking document labeled Final Notice. It read, Last chance offer, $500,000 for your property. Offer expires tomorrow. $500,000? I whistled, astonished. My property, even before the fire, was worth maybe $300,000 tops. They're getting desperate, Agent Sharp observed thoughtfully. But the question is, why? That afternoon, fueled by suspicion, I dove into old county records online. I vaguely remembered my grandfather mentioning something about mineral rights when he left me this land. After nearly 2 hours of searching through digitized archives, I finally unearthed it, a geological survey report from 1972. It clearly indicated the potential existence of a massive aquifer directly beneath my property, possibly one of the largest untapped sources in the entire state. It's not just about building more luxury housing, I told Agent Sharp excitedly when she returned later that day. It's about water rights. Just then, my security system pinged again. My backyard camera showed Brenda Vance engaged in an animated conversation with a man in an expensive-looking suit near my dilapidated storage shed. That, Agent Sharp identified instantly, grabbing her radio, is Victor Sterling, CEO of Westland Development. We rushed outside, but they were already hurrying away towards a waiting luxury car parked down the road. Left conspicuously on my back doorstep was a single, elegant business card. On the back, someone had scrawled 2 words, Final Warning. That evening, Chris Washington arrived, this time accompanied by a team of serious-looking scientists. We need to start comprehensive soil sampling tonight, Mike, he explained urgently. The president wants preliminary results by morning. As the scientists worked diligently under bright portable floodlights, setting up small grids across my fields, Chris pulled me aside again. Look, this isn't just about vertical farming anymore, he said, his voice low and serious. Our new technology uses about 95% less water than traditional agricultural methods. Think about it. Companies that currently control vast water rights stand to lose billions if this goes mainstream. Companies like Westland? I asked, the pieces clicking into place. Exactly, and Chris confirmed. They're not just some regional development company, Mike. They're a subsidiary owned entirely by Aquacore Industries, one of the largest private water rights holders in America. Suddenly, one of the scientists gasped, holding up a soil sample that was glowing faintly under a handheld UV light. "What is it?" I asked, hurrying over. "Rare earth minerals," the scientist breathed, clearly astonished. "Specifically, high concentrations of lithium, cobalt, and neodymium, essential components for advanced battery technology and electronics. Mr. Rossi, your land appears to possess one of the richest, most accessible concentrations I have ever encountered." Just then, Chris's phone buzzed urgently. His face turned visibly serious, almost grim, as he read the incoming message. "The President's Food Security Advisor," he relayed grimly. "The one who disappeared, he's vanished, along with our project blueprints." "A traitor?" I whispered, shocked. "We think so," and suddenly a loud crash erupted from inside my house, interrupting him mid-sentence. We raced inside to find my front window shattered, glass sprayed across the living room floor. 3 individuals dressed head to toe in black, wearing ski masks, were already inside, moving quickly towards my office. Instinctively, I grabbed a nearby heavy-duty shovel I kept by the door for gardening and swung it hard, connecting solidly with one intruder's arm. Just as suddenly, the lights inside the house blazed on. Secret Service agents, ones I hadn't even known were subtly watching the house, swarmed in, seemingly from all directions. The intruders were quickly, efficiently pinned to the floor. Agent Sharp ripped the mask off one of them. I recognized the face immediately from the business card left earlier. Victor Sterling, CEO of Westland Development. "You think this ends with me?" Sterling snarled contemptuously as they expertly handcuffed him. "We've got judges, senators, even governors on our payroll. This conspiracy goes much higher than you can possibly imagine." As they led him and the other intruders away, one of the scientists called out urgently from the yard, "Mr. Rossi, Agent Sharp, you need to see this, right now." We hurried back outside. The scientists had arranged the collected soil samples in a row on a portable table. Under the specialized lights, each one was glowing even more brightly than the last. "This isn't just about farming, or water, or even standard rare earth minerals," the lead scientist said, his voice filled with excitement. "The specific isotopic composition of the minerals here, it's unique. It could potentially revolutionize battery technology as we know it. Safer, longer-lasting, faster charging. Mr. Rossi, whoever controls this specific land effectively controls the future of energy storage." My simple, quiet farm had somehow, unbelievably, become the epicenter of something vastly bigger and more dangerous than a petty neighborhood dispute. "We need to move you to a secure location immediately," Agent Sharp insisted firmly. "Until we understand the full scope of who else is involved in this conspiracy, you are not safe here." As I hastily packed a small overnight bag, still reeling from the night's events, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Rossi," a smooth, confident female voice began, "this is Senator Albright. I understand you've been experiencing some unfortunate trouble with your local homeowners association. How did you get this number?" I asked cautiously, looking over at Agent Sharp, who was already motioning urgently for me to keep the caller talking while she initiated a trace. "That's not important right now," the senator replied dismissively. "What is important is that I believe I can make all your problems simply disappear, if, of course, you're willing to be reasonable and sell your land. To the right buyer, naturally." "And who exactly would the right buyer be?" I asked, playing along while watching Agent Sharp work quickly on her device. Senator Albright laughed softly, a chilling sound. "Let's just say they are friends of mine. Friends who fully understand the true value of what lies beneath your quaint little farm. They're prepared to offer you $1 billion. Cash. Tonight." My hands started shaking. $1 billion for my 5 acres? I'll need some time to think about it, I stalled, trying to sound convincing. Don't think too long, Mr. Rossi, she warned, her voice losing its silky edge and taking on a sharper tone. Not everyone who is currently attempting to acquire your property will be making such generous offers. The call ended abruptly. Agent Sharp looked up from her tracking device, her expression grim but triumphant. The call originated from a secure line, she reported, registered directly to Westland Development Corporation headquarters. We've got her. As we rushed out to a waiting unmarked SUV, Chris's phone rang again. His face went pale as he listened intently. What is it? I asked anxiously as the SUV sped away from my farm, leaving the lights and activity behind. The missing advisor, Chris whispered, his voice barely audible. They found him. He's dead. The next morning, Agent Sharp rushed into the safe house kitchen, where I was nursing a cup of coffee, my mind still racing. You won't believe what we found on Victor Sterling's encrypted phone, she announced, holding up a tablet. He has extensive text messages discussing strategy with someone identified only as the Commissioner. They talk explicitly about stopping the president's farming project at all costs, using HOAs as leverage and acquiring key resource parcels like yours. I almost spilled my coffee. The break-in at my house wasn't just a clumsy attempt to scare me away. These people were playing for incredibly high stakes and were clearly willing to do anything, perhaps even commit murder, to protect their interests and stop our vertical farming project before it could gain traction. We need to set a trap, I declared, suddenly resolute, spreading out copies of my property maps on the table Agent Sharp had provided. And I think I know exactly how to do it. Agent Sharp looked momentarily doubtful, but quickly called Chris Washington. Within an hour, we had devised an audacious plan. We would strategically leak carefully crafted fake news suggesting that President Hayes was returning to my farm the very next day to sign special executive orders, officially launching the vertical farming project nationwide from my property. To make it believable, I immediately jumped on my personal social media accounts, which I knew Brenda and likely others monitored. I posted, "Huge news coming tomorrow. Can't say much yet, but my little farm is about to change everything for American agriculture. Future of farming, #making history, #grandpa's tractor." I even added a slightly blurry photo I'd taken of my half-burned tractor with a small American flag draped symbolically over its seat. Predictably, Brenda Vance and her remaining HOA loyalists took the bait hook, line, and sinker. From the safe house window, using high-powered binoculars Agent Sharp provided, I could see them gathering once again at the 100-foot boundary line of my property, holding new, even angrier-looking signs. My reactivated security cameras picked up Brenda pacing agitatedly, talking excitedly on her cell phone. "She's on the phone with Sterling's lawyer right now," Agent Sharp confirmed, listening in through sophisticated surveillance equipment. "And moments ago, the lawyer contacted the Commissioner. That night, sleep eluded me. What if our elaborate plan didn't work? What if these powerful, ruthless people anticipated a trap? What if someone innocent got hurt in the crossfire?" I found myself pacing, eventually walking out to the secure garage where they'd temporarily stored my damaged tractor. I ran my hand gently along its fire-scarred metal. "We're going to get you fixed up, old friend," I whispered, drawing a strange comfort from the familiar shape. "We're going to win this." At dawn, however, it wasn't the presidential motorcade that arrived at my farm, but a fleet of news vans from every local station and several national outlets. As part of our plan, I had anonymously tipped them off overnight about major developments expected regarding corruption and conspiracy involving the Oak Ridge Estates HOA and high-level officials. Cameras rolled as Agent Sharp, flanked by a team of FBI agents in official raid jackets, calmly approached the group of HOA protesters huddled near my property line. Brenda Vance's face turned utterly white when Agent Sharp addressed her directly, her voice clear and amplified for the cameras. "Brenda Vance," Agent Sharp announced formally, "we have a warrant for your arrest on charges including conspiracy to commit arson, wire fraud, and attempting to interfere with a federal project." "This is ridiculous, preposterous," Brenda shouted, clearly playing to the cameras now surrounding them. "I was simply acting in my capacity as HOA president, protecting our neighborhood values and property investments." "Is that why you accepted $50,000 in undisclosed payments from Westland Development Corporation, specifically to harass me and pressure me into selling my farm?" I called out loudly from my porch, holding up bank records Agent Sharp's team had uncovered and provided to me moments before. "Is that why you conspired to have my grandfather's tractor set on fire?" A collective gasp went through the crowd of onlookers, many of whom were Oak Ridge Estates residents living in houses built by Westland. They clearly had no idea their zealous HOA president was potentially being paid under the table by the very developer who built their homes. It wasn't supposed to escalate like this," Brenda stammered, suddenly looking small, cornered, and scared. "Victor Sterling, he just said to make your life difficult, create violations, make you want to sell. I didn't know about the bigger plan, about stopping the president's farming project." Just then, dramatically, a sleek black SUV screeched to a halt nearby. A well-dressed, imposing man stepped out briskly. Commissioner Peterson of the Agricultural Land Board, the very man identified from Sterling's texts. "That's him, the commissioner!" I pointed, and FBI agents immediately swarmed the vehicle. As a stunned Commissioner Peterson was swiftly handcuffed and read his rights, he glared venomously across the yard directly at me. "You have no idea what you've meddled in, Rossi," he spat, his face dark with fury. "This new farming technology, it would have destroyed thousands of jobs in traditional agriculture, undermined the entire established system, or perhaps created thousands of new jobs, Commissioner," I replied calmly, meeting his glare. "Change can be scary, yes, but fighting progress with arson, conspiracy, and potentially murder is never the answer." Within days, the entire sordid story exploded nationwide. News outlets dubbed the unfolding scandal the Garden Plot Conspiracy. Victor Sterling, Commissioner Peterson, Senator Albright, and 12 other individuals, including corporate executives and lobbyists, were indicted on a slew of federal charges ranging from conspiracy and bribery to arson and obstruction of justice. Investigators revealed they had spent millions secretly funding and manipulating HOAs across the country, specifically targeting landowners like me, whose properties were strategically valuable or potentially suitable for new, disruptive agricultural or resource projects they wanted to control or suppress. Brenda Vance and 4 other Oak Ridge Estates HOA board members faced lesser charges, but still lost their positions, reputations, and significant assets. It turned out most of them hadn't fully grasped the vast scope of the conspiracy. They simply thought they were being paid handsomely by Westland Development to rigidly enforce HOA rules and harass specific homeowners deemed undesirable by the developer. 3 months later, remarkably, my grandfather's tractor sat gleaming under the afternoon sun, freshly painted in its iconic green and yellow, fully repaired and restored thanks to generous donations from local businesses and fellow farmers who had read about the story. It sat proudly in front of my farmhouse, which now boasted the first fully operational presidential vertical farming research tower in America. President Hayes had indeed kept his promise, and my modest 5-acre property was now on track to produce as much fresh food annually as 50 acres of traditional farmland, using a fraction of the water. Chris Washington became a regular visitor, often bringing government experts, agricultural students, and international delegations to study our groundbreaking success. "You know, Mike," he said one evening as we watched the sunset paint the sky over the quietly humming tower, "when I first suggested your farm to the president, I honestly just thought it would be a nice, quiet, out-of-the-way place to test our ideas. I never in a million years expected you'd end up helping uncover a massive nationwide conspiracy." I smiled, leaning back in my chair. "Honestly, Chris, I just wanted to keep my grandfather's tractor safe and farm my little piece of land in peace." Perhaps the most surprising visitor arrived one rainy Tuesday afternoon. Brenda Vance's husband, Robert, stood hesitantly on my porch, soaking wet and nervously holding a covered casserole dish. "Brenda asked me to bring this," he said quietly, avoiding my eyes. "It was her famous lasagna. She's, doing community service now, down at the senior center. The judge was pretty lenient since she fully cooperated with the feds. She's genuinely sorry, Mike, for everything. I accepted the unexpected peace offering. Tell her I hope she's learning from this," I said sincerely. Robert nodded, looking relieved. "Oh, she is. I think we all are around here." He paused at the steps. "Interestingly," Robert added, turning back slightly, "the new HOA president, Dave Miller, your neighbor, he actually wants to talk to you about the possibility of converting some of the unused community green spaces into smaller neighborhood-run vertical farms, inspired by yours, of course." As he left, I looked out at my tractor, gleaming softly in the rain. Sometimes, I realized, standing your ground isn't just about winning a fight. It's about planting seeds for change, even in the most unexpected places. A week later, proving how much things had truly shifted, a bright yellow school bus pulled up my driveway. A group of excited fourth graders arrived for a field trip tour of the vertical farm. As they gathered eagerly around my now famous tractor, one little girl with bright, curious eyes raised her hand. "Mr. Rossi," she asked earnestly, "did you know back then that your tractor was going to start a whole revolution?" I laughed, placing a hand on the tractor's cool metal hood. "No," I admitted honestly, "I just knew it was worth fighting for." That very night, the phone rang. It was President Hayes. "Mike," he said warmly, "just wanted to let you know personally. We're officially taking the vertical farming program nationwide, establishing research hubs in all 50 states. And it all started," he added with a chuckle, "because you refused to let a bully HOA push you around." Later, I walked out onto my porch, breathing in the cool night air. Fireflies danced merrily over my fields, now a symbol not of conflict, but of innovation and resilience. It was astounding to think my simple, stubborn stand against an unfair HOA had unintentionally helped change not just my own life, but potentially the future of farming itself. And my grandfather's tractor? The one that started it all. It runs better than ever. This story serves as a powerful reminder that standing up for what's right, even when facing seemingly overwhelming opposition or powerful interests, can have ripple effects far beyond our own personal struggles. One person's courage and determination, rooted in principle and armed with truth, and perhaps a well-placed security camera, and can indeed challenge injustice, inspire community action, and even contribute to positive change on a much larger scale. It highlights the importance of knowing your rights, verifying information, and not underestimating the power of perseverance against bullies, whether they're in an HOA or a corporate boardroom. What did you think of Mike's journey? Have you ever faced a similar situation with an HOA or powerful entity? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories about everyday people making extraordinary differences.